What do you think is a common goal for product marketers, regardless of like stage or industry category?
Product marketing at its core, it's really about connecting your customers with your products. It's like quite simple, right? Customers have many different choices and you get to make the argument for why they choose you.
When do you hire your first product manager?
You have the need for someone to kind of like own it, which means like, oh my gosh, we have all this good insight about competitors, how to talk about our product. We need someone to like standardize it, make it better. It's not about someone to come in and help you find product market fit.
Welcome to Growth Talks, where we dive deep into the world of growth and marketing with industry leaders. I'm Krystina Rubino, your host and the general manager of the offline marketing practice at Right Side Up. Today, I'm excited to welcome Deanna Dong, who leads product marketing at Writer, the generative AI company for enterprises. Previously, Deanna was the VP of Marketing at Wealthfront, a direct-to-consumer FinTech company. As Wealthfront's first product marketing manager, she helped define the product marketing function and built and scaled the marketing team across brand, content, acquisition, lifecycle, and analytics. Deanna has spent the past few years running a marketing consulting business, working with startups across AI, SaaS, healthcare, FinTech, and crypto. In this episode, we're going to get into why product marketing is important for an early stage company and how to successfully build a product marketing function from scratch.
Thank you, Christine. I'm so happy to be here and excited for our conversation.
Awesome. Well, we can get straight into it. I think product marketing is one of those disciplines where everybody knows what it means, kind of, but it can be a little ambiguous, right? So like it can mean different things at different stages of companies, different verticals, categories, and you've worked with just about every iteration or worked and kind of curated and worked within every iteration of product marketing. What do you think is a common goal for product marketers, regardless of like stage or industry or category?
Yeah, such a good question. I really think you're right. Like product marketing, 100 different companies, 100 different jobs, right? Super. I think not always so defined and unified, but I think for me, product marketing at its core, it's really about connecting your customers with your products. It's like quite simple, right? Customers have many different choices, and you get to make the argument for why they choose you. I think that's what we do at our core, and that's really just about the strategy. To actually execute that strategy relies on partnering with other teams, like demand gen teams, growth marketing teams, sales teams, customer success. And I really think of that product marketing as analogous to product managers. We kind of help hone and own the strategy around the product, but ultimately you're working with other partners to actually execute and deliver on the marketing. But we get to define, that argument. Why should your customers pick you? That's at the core of what we do.
Yeah. And I could see how that, like, we like talking about product market fit. Like, it's just like this, we abbreviate it. We love a good abbreviation in growth marketing. But it's so fundamental to hear you talk about it that way that I think we forget that it can be distilled so neatly. But obviously your experiences have been really different depending on whether you were the first product hire at Wealthfront and you've since consulted with a ton of different companies across different stages. What's been your experience like across different stage companies in particular? Like, do people start overcomplicating it at some point? Do early stage companies undercomplicate? That's not a word, but we're going to pretend it is.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good question. And yeah, I love acronyms too, PMF, PMM, all that jazz. So we will get into it. But yeah, I think that question is really, a really good one. And I think really the role of product marketing evolves over time and through the stages, right? And it's probably a parallel path in, what's that narrative, what's that argument you make to your customers. It's also probably similar to how your product strategy might evolve. So very early stage, I've worked with, seed, Series A, super early companies and more of a consulting context, right? They have a product out in market. They're starting to get traction with some early customers, maybe some prospects. And that early stage of work for product marketing, I think, is really honing that initial story. What exactly have you built? Why is it differentiated from the competitors that are available? Or maybe you don't have competitors and it's the old way of doing things. Working with leadership to align on who exactly is the target audience, and this one we get a lot, especially I think founders who are excited. They our product is for everyone. It's for SMBs and mid market and enterprise. It could be used for everything, but that's not how you're going to build a business. So who exactly is that beachhead of your target audience you're going to go after. And then it's the job of product marketing to really help you hone that pitch, right? And I think that is really early on. And I don't think that job is just for product marketers to do, right? Founders are doing that in the beginning, right? They're the first people talking to customers. That's the early stage. I think as your product gains traction, PMM is helping codify that, turn that into something reusable across channels, like your first call sales deck that maybe the first couple of sales reps are using, your website. It's really about kind of like codifying, testing, iterating on it, and someone to like directly own it. But that early stage really is about that initial story.
When you think about like the early stage, because like you may or may not have even established if you have product market fit yet, right? Like there's so much that kind of goes into product marketing early. And you mentioned, I'm going to butcher it, but the like basically kind of the first sales presentation that you might be helping. What are like the other tactics and things that you do earlier stage that like you consider fundamental to the process, right? Like the actual hows of helping to establish that vision and not just being like we're for everyone, everything is great. Like tactically, what are you kind of making sure you set up and knocking down before you like move on to the next parts of your playbook?
Yeah, I think for the early stage, it's really the intersection of three things like that will define your core, let's call it your core positioning, right? That's I think what bread and butter product marketers are doing. The positioning the product in this landscape. And so I think the three components are one, who are your competitors? Two, who is your target audience? And then three, what's your product vision, your product approach? That's kind of your secret sauce. Like the intersection, I think of it as like the three circles, Venn diagram kind of thing. That middle is really your core positioning. And I think in terms of tactical work, what that means, and I actually have, I don't know if this is a hot take, but I think if you're pre-product market fit, I don't know if you need a PMM because really the early before PMF, I think everybody should be trying to find product market fit. And what that really is about is taking your product, showing it to real customers, getting feedback, seeing if they'll use it, iterating your product. That is, the core team, founding team, everybody's job, and probably the single most important thing they should be doing. My point of view is that until you have enough confidence and traction, there's not really anything to codify yet, right? It's so much of it should just be iterating on the product and seeing if, folks are delighted by it, people want to buy it, like that's the core work, right? But once you get past that, I think the core work of what PMM can do tactically is one, customer research. Hopefully you're already having these in-depth conversations, but this might be a way to kind of programmatically speak to a larger number of users, prospects as well. Do a competitive audit. I'm sure the founding team has thoughts around competitive, but getting into the nuts and bolts of what other people are doing. And then product vision, I think that's, the team will have like their PRDs, they'll have what they're excited about, but kind of really figuring out of that list, what's the most important, what's kind of more the vision of how we expect, work to change or whatever category you're in, helping them codify that. And then those three components together is how you develop that core messaging that you could test on website, on first call decks and things like that.
Oh man, I knew this was going to be one that was like chock full of like actual stuff people could use, but like I'm like, oh my god, everything she says is so good. But it's funny because you touched on something there, and you touched on like kind of the founding team and their I'll be nice and say opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think one thing that like nobody gets into starting a company because you don't have a strong opinion about something that needs to be changed or something that needs to be done. But especially early stage, what I found is that different opinions are weighted differently. And also, like, everybody has an opinion. Everybody has been wearing so many hats and has so many different thoughts and loves to share them all of the time. So when you're in that kind of an environment, what do you think is the most important thing in order to make sure you're successful and not distracted?
Yeah, I think that's, so important what you're bringing up. And I think really the answer there is like, it's not like a fun phrase, but I think it's internal alignment, right? Which is, like, I think the example I gave before, who is our target audience, right? Should we be going after developers with this product or is it really SMB? Is it a bottoms up PLG motion? Are we going after, line of business decision makers at mid-market companies? These are all very different motions. And I think when it comes to some of these decisions, it's not obvious what's right or wrong, right? A big part of building a startup is kind of taking, your data, your intuition and making some of these strategic decisions and then align your team against it. But I think product marketers and the work we need to do, it requires that upfront alignment, right? So let's get really, really clear. Who is our target audience? And we might change and iterate in a quarter and 2 quarters, but for the first half of the year, who are we trying to go after? right? What's the competitive set we've kind of decided? And that needs to be codified. And I think the toughest thing for product marketers is you've done all this great, research and customer interviews, you crafted this great message and you put together the asset, and someone's like, well, what about this other competitor? Right. Well, this is not going to resonate with a CMO. And then you're kind of like whiplashed into a whole new kind of workflow. Right. So I think in general, for me, having that internal alignment for whatever the work stream might be, I'm using positioning as kind of the example because it comes up early, but defining that, right? Stating the upfront assumptions, making sure the stakeholders are identified, making sure everybody has heard what is the set of assumptions that we're going in to do the work, so that what we're evaluating in the end is, did we execute on what we tried to do? We're not arguing about what were the upfront assumptions, because if you're doing that at the end of the work stream, you're kind of screwed. So I think that's like the process. And again, I'd say with a lot of the stuff, there really isn't a pre hindsight 2020 like right answer of what you should have done, but it's impossible for us to do some of this more kind of amorphous, ambiguous strategic work if we don't just define some kind of constraints up front. And I think that's really important.
It's funny because something that I say now is like early on in my career, I loved to pretend that I had all the answers. I loved it. It was like, well, I know that. And it's like, well, yeah, I know things, but now like the more senior I get, what I've realized is that nobody actually knows the answers. We're just asking like better questions, or we're just like more experienced. But what I've what I've consistently found, and you kind of mentioned this about target audience, is like I am consistently surprised at the target audiences that are excited by certain products. And I do think like we go into that journey with so much bias. Like if I had a nickel for every time we had like a new podcast advertiser, somebody coming in hot and being like, my target's suburban women with children. I'm like, no, you want to reach moms? Like, no CPG company has ever thought of that before. That is a revolutionary work. So like I did like what you said about beachhead, because there's always those targets that are your priorities. But I also think like, how do you decide which targets to prioritize besides the one where you're like, well, no shit, like somebody's gonna, if you are this, then you want that. But how do you like start to do the actual work to be like, oh, well, you're not the target that makes the most sense just by common sense, but like how do you find them? How do you figure it out?
Such a good question. I think like that is probably the $1 million question for a lot of this. I would say like one thing is that, and I think this is echoing what you mentioned. I think it's like you have an attachment to what you think should be right, right? You're like, you've built this product, you think it's for this audience, this group. That's who it should resonate. That's in your head, what's supposed to work. But I think or the proof is always in the pudding in terms of like the data, right? And I think at Wealthfront, we had this, we had, when I was there, it was 2015 to 2020-ish. So that was the time frame, still early in FinTech. We were really, very like energized by our mission to democratize, sophisticated financial tools to everybody. We wanted to help everybody, right? But I think, and there was lots of great ideas internally, like, hey, we should do these like education programs for like, first time job people, first time in the job market, or college students, or all these, really kind of like, I not idealistic, but well-intentioned idea. Like these are the people who should be using the product. How do we teach them everything they should care about with their finances, get them all the way up to investing? Then they're going to pick an automated investor like us. Then they're going to realize the value of what we do. I mean, that journey is very high, right? And there were attempts, we like got good metrics around engagement or content views, but they weren't driving the business metrics. And so then I think it was taking a hard look, and a lot of it was driven by our CEO, Andy Radcliffe, who teaches the Stanford Business School class about product market fit. And he had very strong ideas. He was such a great mentor and teacher, but it was really about like, who are the people that are actually going to use your product, and what's the next group of people that's the closest to it? And I think for us, a lot of it was, and tactically, like you asked me, I think it's through research, right? So it's whether it's data, whether it's customer interviews, a lot of that. And I think in my experience, a lot of the qualitative interviews can add a lot, because they don't just tell you who, but they tell you why they might be interested, which is going to be super important, right? You can run a survey and someone can say, the people who want to use Wealthfront are mostly 40 to 60-year-olds. That's a great data point, but like why? You might not know that. So I think talking to customers, qualitative interviews, super important. And what we actually found is that people really make these big financial decisions when there's like a big push or pull in their life. People are not like trying to reinvent their finances in like a vacuum of, their day to day is going great. They don't have any reason, right? It's usually, you have an IPO or some sort of big liquidity event, you're all of a sudden have a bunch of cash you don't know what to do with. It's going to be life events around, having a kid or buying a house, right? There's actually these like pushes and pulls in your life, and that's when the decision making happens, right? And so for us, that was, a clearer perspective into who might actually be using the products versus who we wanted to be using the products. And then we ran similar kind of research around kind of understanding of finances. I think our product at the time was fairly advanced compared to what was in the market. So for people to understand the details, they kind of had to already get investing. So if we're going to start teaching people like, what is S&P? Why should you invest? That's going to take a long time. So that's a long story, but I think that's kind of the perspective around finding beachheads.
No, that's amazing, and that's like exactly the kind of story I want to tell because and honestly those kinds of stories are why we started the show because it's also really easy to dismiss qual it as like, oh, it's just one person's opinion or whatever, but it's like what stuck out to me about your story is not that the demographics are besides the point, but sometimes they are. Because what you just described to me are life events and psychographics, right?
Mhm.
I don't know what makes people wake up in the morning and choose violence when they buy a house, but so many of my friends are like, I'm going to buy one of my close girlfriends right now. She's in the middle of buying her first house. She is 8 months pregnant and she got married last year. I'm like, so are you just like knocking every life event down? And it's like, are you trying to like, let's just get it all done at once? I'm like, I love you for this, but like, I know that's the time that people start to like take a harder look at their finances or like, oh, I have to learn what a 529 even is, or like all of these concepts that are kind of like ephemeral to us and we hear about them, but we're like, I don't need to worry about that. And then all of a sudden, you need to worry about that. And
Yeah.
yeah, that it's just so interesting because we think of demographics and targets as like monoliths
Yeah,
sometimes.
exactly. Yeah.
And I feel like qual brings the humanity into that, into understanding them.
Yeah, and I think this also extends into more of like an enterprise motion too. As in my introduction, you mentioned I work at Writer AI. We're a generative AI company. We build a full stack generative AI platform for enterprises, right? And I think it's a similar phase of like generative AI can do anything. It can transform any workflow, right? And so for us, I think, and for other players in the space, it is about, within the enterprise, who has the most pain, where's that push and pull, and what's the way to kind of define and target some of those people at a more granular level. So I think, the similar kind of lessons extends to different business models and verticals and all of that.
Yeah, I mean that makes so much sense to me. And but like, say you've done the research, right? You've done your qual, done your quant, you've crafted the messaging, you've aligned with the internal team, everybody's happy or as happy as everybody's going to get when you're trying to build consensus across a bunch of opinionated people, right? So let's just say that we've done all of that. Easy. How do you know you've gotten it right?
That's such a good question. I actually have another piece of advice for like, I would say aligning all these opinions too before you even get into the validation. But in terms of validation, I think what we found, or what I found in my work on positioning and messaging is like you have that core positioning strategy. A really useful way is to actually create some sort of asset that can be tested, right? It just builds confidence in when you fully roll it out or ship it. So that could be, hey, we have our core messaging strategy. We think it's, for millennials who save, we lead with the value of automation over all the technical features. And we, target certain life milestones. Put together the landing page asset, right? Find 10 users on usertesting.com that match your requirements for who this page is for. Get that qualitative feedback. Similarly, quickly run ads. Like we would do that all the time. Take a messaging, run the
Yeah.
ads and A/B test them. And I think, of course, website redesigns, A/B tests as well. Like there's so many ways to test. And I think a lot of times I've seen it at times where product marketing, the messaging, the positioning, it's kind of some sort of philosophical exercise. Maybe it's, all kind of subjective, and then we kind of give it to folks to use. But the truth is you have these other counterparts, whether it is your growth marketing team, your demand gen team, even your sales team, that can get you that data. And ideally it's meant to be like a cycle, right? It's meant to, PMM is coming up with the hypotheses, building kind of the assets for them. The rest of the team is distributing. We're learning, and then we're iterating. And it's also painful because you're like, oh, I shipped this amazing messaging. The website's perfect. And then you learn people don't like it. But I think
How
it's
dare they?
yeah, how dare they? Yeah, yeah, they don't have taste. No, but it's a painful, it's a painful exercise. But I think ultimately it gets you to what you want, which is your results. And I think the other thing I have found is like, and I'm sure others have experienced this too. It's like even before you can ship the asset to test, there's like such divergent opinions internally, right? It's like some people think that you should be emphasizing this value prop, and other people are convinced that like nobody cares about that, and what they care about is your differentiated tech. It's because we run tax loss harvesting, our algo is better, whatever, right? And it's almost like a bit of a futile argument to have in any kind of like alignment meeting. And so something I've found really helpful is to do divergent directions. And basically what that means is like, just like a lot of your other channels, other assets in growth that you're running, also have strong hypotheses that are divergent for messaging, right? So let's build a lo-fi landing page that emphasizes, this technical differentiators approach. And then let's do one that's much more stage of life, qualitative kind of approach. They have to be really different. And then let's get feedback from folks, whether it's qual or quant testing, and see what happens, right? And I think usually when you bring that data in, the resolution's a lot easier. Otherwise, you're just in the like the CPO thinks versus the CEO thinks, and I'm okay at alignment, but still those are tough to triangulate at the end.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And also, like, we didn't even plan it that way, but you gave me the perfect entry into the A/B test. Like, mwah, chef's kiss. We love a good transition. But like, we'll get a little work related, we'll get a little funsies. But yeah, like as you just mentioned, an A/B test can be incredibly important in so many facets of growth marketing, but also for product marketing, obviously, validating or disproving some of your hypotheses. And we thought it'd be fun, also, since I can only be work related for so long before I burst, to do like a little dumb A/B test and just, pick your brain a little bit about some work related stuff, some fun stuff. The first one, I mean, it may or may not be easy, but product led growth or marketing led growth?
I'm going to say product led growth because it makes the marketing job easier. I actually think that
Yes.
if ultimately what you care about is like a business that's going to be successful, that's going to be profitable, I always say like if the marketing is like pulling the cart, that's probably not the situation you want to be in. You want the product to
No.
already have success and you want to tell the story.
Yeah. Our job is made much easier when we're just telling people about great products that they should know about anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I am shit at selling anything that I don't believe in. Because people are always like, oh my God, you're so great at sales. I'm like, I'm only great at sales when I want to tell people about something that's really cool. Okay. Niche targeting or mass market?
Hmm. I think niche targeting. And I think, a lot of this is I'm working with more early stage and startups. And again, it's about, building the beachheads, finding the people that work. I also think it allows for more creative messaging. I think the more mass market, it's
Hmm.
probably more diluted, more of a brand message. But yeah, that's my instinct.
Fair. Beach or mountains?
I think for me, beach, just love a pina colada, an excuse to get tan.
I mean, honestly, just everybody's always like, I want to do this vacation where I go and I hike and I do all this stuff. And I'm like, I will see you later. Have a
Yeah.
lovely time on your journey. I wish that the best
Yeah.
for you.
I aspire to be a active vacationer, but I think I'm probably not.
Yeah. Yeah. I know at this point, I'm like, I know myself. I'll be by the pool with a drink. I'll see you guys later. Generalist or specialist?
Hmm. I think I would go with generalist, which I think evolves specialization over time. But I think to me, just doing the same thing repetitively might be difficult. So yeah.
Yeah. I like that. East Coast or West Coast?
Oof. Wow. So I'm from
You're
Florida,
getting
which
in
I don't know
trouble
if that
either way.
counts. Yeah, I don't know if that counts as East Coast. I'm gonna say now I am firmly a reformed West Coast person. I don't rock as fast. I'm more open to tarot cards and auras and journaling and mental health issues. And I have accepted that I will go to the best city in the world, New York, a couple times a year, and that's it, but not live there. So
That is literally my answer that I tell everybody. Like, I'll talk about vibrating on a frequency all day
yeah,
long now. I'm
yeah.
there. I'm
I'm like,
so
yeah,
there. But when it
I'm
comes,
into that. That makes sense to me.
yeah. Oh my God, that totally makes sense to me. Like the moon, 100%. Mercury, let's talk about her. But like, I literally, everybody's always like, well, I'm like, there's one city. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry. I'm like that
yeah.
asshole New
I'm like, I
Yorker
don't
who
even live
left a
in it.
while
That's
ago.
fine. Yeah.
I, yeah, exactly. It's fine. Okay. Cooking or dining out?
Mm. I love both
Bear in
so
mind,
much.
somebody does the dishes for one of them.
Right.
So
I would
That's
say probably still dining out. I love food. I cook a lot actually, but I think I still enjoy like stuff someone else makes that's good and creative rather
it
than
gives you ideas too for your own cooking, I
that's
find.
true.
Product demos or storytelling videos?
Mm, that's a hard one.
If they were easy, we wouldn't need to test our assumptions.
Yeah. I would say storytelling. I mean, I think
Okay.
I'm a creative at heart. Like I love,
Ah,
the like larger narrative, what's in pop culture, what's gonna tug at people's heartstrings, and like that's like the best, most interesting part. So I think telling the bigger story is more fun.
I like that. I mean, product demos don't get you like referenced on SNL. Not that
Mhm.
that's a barometer of anything, but there are times where a brand just becomes bigger than the story that you're trying to tell, and there's something
Yeah,
beautiful about that.
yeah. Or if you
Um,
really, really stink it up, and yeah, that could also get you on
that
like
is,
ClickHole or something. Yeah.
oh God, pray thee not. Oh boy, tennis or pickleball?
Okay, I gotta go tennis because I've actually been trying to learn this year. I've put in a lot of time. I'm not very good yet, but I now get angry when I go to tennis courts and people are playing pickleball there. I'm like, that's not what they're for. So shots fired.
I love that. So the only thing you're gonna get that's like blowback from this interview is now like pickleball people are gonna come
Yeah,
for your
big
DMs.
pickleball is coming for me for sure.
Yeah, they'll be okay. Copy first or design first?
I think copy first for me almost always because I think the copy is like how you think that structures the story, the narrative, and then you partner with design and bring it to life. But I always start copy first.
I like that. That concludes our silly little test.
Good. I hope I
Of
passed.
course you did. There is no right answer. We are only
Okay.
testing our hypotheses.
Unlike a real A/B test, there's no right answer.
Well, if I start like telling people where I'm biased, like there's a question that I ask that's dogs or cats, and I love all animals. We don't deserve any of them, but like my answer is obviously dogs. So like I'm so sorry. I don't mean to say that there's a right answer. I might have just made you not like me. But
Oh my God. You're good.
fair enough. Okay, so we actually talked a lot about early stage. What's really interesting is obviously every function changes when you start going to later stage. And there's all those pain points that start happening as you advance in stages, right? But in your opinion and experience, how does the role of product marketing change when companies transition from early to mid to later stage?
I think to me, like it's starts with early stage, more about that creation, right? It's the 0 to 1. You're making something out of nothing. And that takes a lot of creativity. And that's like a certain mindset for a PMM to have. And I think as the company gets bigger, um, you're always creating because there's net new products, net new competitors, all of that. But a lot of it is PMM is enabling the broader team, right, to have the right information, the right assets, the right talking points, the enablement, right? And so then it's about scaling. And so I do think it's more about going more kind of comprehensive across different touch points as well as going deeper on each, right? So there's maybe like a bit more specialization. I think the core work is still the same, but I think the purview maybe becomes smaller for each PMM, and it's more about like the accuracy and the polish and having the right versions for all the verticals versus you're building something net new that might need to be iterated and changed because there's not really a right answer yet.
It's interesting too because you mentioned this earlier, but you're like, no, like sometimes you're so early that you're like, don't hire a product manager. Like just don't hire somebody yet. So when do you hire your first product manager? And then how do you evaluate talent when it comes to like selecting that person or any product marketing manager?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the tipping point for that first PMM, I think you have to me, like, it'd be like you have the need for someone to kind of like own it. Which means like, "Oh my gosh, we have all this good insight about competitors or how to talk about our product. We need someone to like standardize it, make it better." It's not about someone to come in and help you find product market fit, right? I think that's the thing that I get scared. It's like, "Oh, we'll get a PMM to come in. They're gonna figure out how to frame the product, and that's how we're
Oh,
gonna
magic wands.
get people to sell." Like, that's not what happens, right? Like, that's everyone's problem in the beginning, that's the product, and so I think that's the hole I wouldn't think is not great because you get the PMM in and you haven't found product market fit, then they're not really doing that core job. So I think it's like people are loving your product, you are having traction, people are excited, people like want to talk to you, and you need to like you can't get the assets created, whether it's like the website or the slides or the enablement, you can't get it out fast enough for people to distribute. I think that's when, to me, it's like, okay, you need someone where their craft is like the messaging. They're going to come in and do that. And so that's kind of my point of view on that. And then in terms of the first PMM hire, I think it probably depends on your needs, right? I think the core messaging, that creative thinking, that ability to do the positioning, like that's probably pretty bread and butter. But in addition to that, they're probably an early member of your general marketing team. So if you have an instinct that, hey, for our audience, like this, B2B audience, we know content is going to be huge. We know content marketing is likely going to be big. Then you probably want a PMM who can flex a little bit into that, manage some freelancers, take on that, right? So I think there's where you kind of maybe have a personal perspective based on what you have. But I would say in general for early PMM, first hire, I would say strong writing is huge because you're probably not going to have, a copywriter. Like there's not, a whole kind of workflow to refine the work. So that person is going to probably be the one executing, and you want someone sharp and well who can write well.
That makes so much sense. And I mean, it's so funny because like you'd think this is the obligatory AI question, but like you actually work in an AI company. So I want to ask you this question more than most. How do you think product marketers can leverage AI today? And how do you see that role being impacted in the future?
Such a great question. Love to get it. And I think, a lot of what we do at Writer is to try to enable people across functions and heavily in marketing to be able to do their job better. I would say, like, to me, there's like different levels of what AI can do. So, and it's like maybe like a kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy, but like the lower level, I think it is about day to day individual productivity, right? I'm a marketer, I'm a PMM. I'm about to interview a subject matter expert who's a CISO. I can ask Writer to help me generate a list of questions for them, right? It's kind of like that day to day in your workflow that you already are doing incremental productivity improvement. So for sure, I think so many opportunities for PMMs marketers to do that already. To me, the next level of what AI can do, and I think this is a lot of what Writer excels at, is to actually help you automate some of the processes that are a lot more structured, a lot more complex, and might require more than one person to do. It's not about your individual productivity, but some sort of workflow, right? So, for example, how much time do folks right now spend on competitive research, right? And building out battle cards or one pagers or all these assets. We can actually build custom apps where if we can, structure the inputs that should go into it, structure the outputs. And so, for example, maybe that's the research notes about competitors, maybe they're the interview notes, maybe they're kind of the assets you created, and it can actually structure an output of like what that battle card, you've defined the outputs, it can create that asset, right? And I think similarly, we actually have customers already doing this, which is you can take kind of some of the core messaging components from like your core messaging doc, and it'll actually spit out the initial bill of materials for a launch. Like how much time do we all spend? You write the messaging doc, then you write the blog post, then you take text from the blog post, you write the social copy. And actually, this is something we do for every single launch. And what if there's a way to take one standardized input and then generate all these derivative outputs, right? And that's, the hours you save in that is incredible. And again, you need a human to kind of review for quality, but it shifts the work 90% to technology, 10% to you, versus we have people who could be thinking of better, creative brand ideas or more interesting kind of messaging ideas, the stuff that we're not expecting AI to do. We're having them rewrite, content over and over again. And I think these are the kind of things that really AI can help solve.
Heard somebody say that the marketers and the people who use AI to make their jobs better, easier, whatever, are going to win in the long run over the people who are like, AI, I don't even know her, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's like very natural. I have the fortune of talking to a lot of like awesome customers who are ahead of the ball. And I do think that it's like, like it's not really about being replaced. It's just this is the skill set you need to have to do your job better. And I think the truth though is like change management is really hard. New technology is really hard. There's no standard way how we're all doing this, right? So I think, that is just part of the evolution of the tech.
Talking about evolution, actually, as we were gathering everything for this interview, you have taken a path in your career that's not the typical up and to the right, straight and narrow. Like, I'm going to just play it down the middle. I'm going to continue advancing until eventually I hit a pinnacle, and then I'm going to be happy. Because that's how life works, right? But like from working your way up to an executive level, and I literally wrote this down because I really wanted to ask you. And then you shifted gears into consulting. Then you stepped into middle management. Now you were doing a lot of individual contribution work, all while taking a couple of sabbaticals. I would just love to hear about how you've navigated these career changes and how the experiences you've had have like shaped your current perspective on leadership roles, because that is it is so interesting to me, and also not a lot of people talk about it in the open. It's, if somebody takes a sabbatical, it's like, oh, like it's a
Yeah,
secret.
yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to know how all of this has shaped your perspective on leadership roles, and how you've navigated all of this.
I think that a lot of the decisions I've made have felt maybe like not cookie cutter, but I don't think I felt like I had a choice because I feel like I'm a very genuine person, very connected to what I value, what I like and don't like. And I think it's really hard for me to pretend to like something I don't. So like I started out my career actually in traditional finance, working on Wall Street. I did it for 4 years. I was actually pretty good at it, but I just did not like it. And I realized the only people around me who love their jobs, and this was in sales and trading in the early 2010s. There were people who either like loved the financial markets and had all these trade ideas and would like so excited when the Fed would have an announcement, like all that, or there were people who like loved money. So I ended up leaving, moving out to San Francisco, got my first job at Dropbox, and from there, I kind of think the first handful of years was about. I wasn't even trying to like climb, like I was never like, oh, I can't wait to be a VP or CMO, like that's my life's work. I think it was just like I love to learn. I started actually more on the demand gen side. At Wealthfront, I realized I like product marketing because I like the storytelling, the creative. Funny story, I actually joined Wealthfront as a PM to run A/B tests and do growth product work, and I actually like really didn't like it because it's just not how my brain operates. It's not like what I think about. So then I moved into PMM, and there's just opportunities to take on more and do more at Wealthfront. I just love the team so much, the brand, everything like that. But I think ultimately, like my approach was like in the beginning, optimize for learnings, and that just ended up bringing me to broader purviews in marketing and more leadership, which is great. And that like served me well into like call it my early 30s. But then I think after that point, when you like summited to the mountain, I think it's then more like where do you actually want to go? Right? Like what do you actually care about from a values perspective? How do you like to spend your time? That's I think the next maybe decade plus. And I think for me, like the life to live is the one where you as close as you can, you have to be practical. You're doing the things that like are aligned with your values that you enjoy or you find meaning in, like, or maybe you don't enjoy them, but you find a lot of meaning in them. And I think that's kind of like the last couple of years, the kind of path I've taken. And that's included taking a sabbatical. I've been at Wealthfront for I think almost 5 years at that time, or 4 years. And I just needed a break. I wanted to go on this, world trip and have this experience. And my team was so supportive and my boss was so supportive of me there. It was just, I don't know if it was like great for my career, but it was like an incredible life experience. I would never trade that. And then after a more recent full-time role, actually went into doing consulting, right? And like I did that for on and off like 2 years and incredible lifestyle flexibility, all of that. And then coming back to writer, it was an incredible team, interesting product. I knew I didn't want, a head of marketing role. Like I knew product marketing is what I loved. I knew the early stage was what I thought was fun. And so ultimately, like it seems like the right fit for me now. I'm getting a chance to build a team. I'm working with people I love. And, I think who knows what might be the next thing where I want to kind of take leadership. But I think like having that flexibility and reacting to like what pushes you, versus those expectations, hopefully makes for a happier life. So we'll see. Yeah, that's been my approach. But I will say, like, I feel very grateful that like, and I don't know if this is a bit cautious probably, but I think early on in my career, I was more like, I do want to learn. I want to take on more. I want to be responsible for more. I want to like expand scope because that early phase to me was about like stretching myself and getting those experiences. And I think if I flopped it and was like, hey, I want to start a bow business, which I actually did as well for a little bit. Like when I was in my 20s, I think I would have lost time to actually gain a lot of those skills that then gave me flexibility to like downsize, the work piece if I wanted to. So I would say the ordering to me I felt like I made the right choice from like my risk tolerance perspective. But yeah, I think it built up like the equity for me to take more risks later.
You know, Tyler, our CEO, and something he said to me early on here that has always stuck with me. When I was interviewing, well, when Tyler and I were chatting about me coming here and starting the offline business, I remember early on we had a lot of really meaningful conversations like this one. And then he's like, I know you think that you want to do whatever. You want to be a VP of growth or you want to be a CMO. He's like, and I know that. And I want that for you. And he's like, you may in a few years decide that you want nothing less than to do those jobs. He was right.
Hmm.
He was 100% right. I look at it now and I'm like, I don't, I don't think I want to be a CMO when I grow up. Like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with that information, mind you. So like that's a whole other thing. But
Yeah.
like, are you like, are you surprised? Because you strike me as somebody who's so ambitious is like such a big word, but like ambitious in that and hungry and curious and like, is there, has it surprised you that you don't want to just consistently like, okay, like LFG, like let's go.
No, 100%. And I think to be really vulnerable, like I had incredible peers at Dropbox, at Wealthfront. They're all, whether it's VC or in-house, doing incredible things. And you know, go to a happy hour and you feel a little like, oh, like, should I be doing that? And like, I think 100%, like, and I think that's that ambition and like, you know, the type A mentality did push me for a really long time. And I think I've gone through like existential mini crises to like reconcile that I want to do consulting or reconcile I want to take this PMM job here, right? But I think ultimately, I think just knowing what your motivation for something is, right? Like it's like, do you want to be a CMO because makes a lot of money, which is totally fair, or like you like to be in charge, or you love to solve people org problems, or you love to have, you know, the executive level engagement with others and be in those discuss like what is it that it entices you about it? And I think what I realized, at least for this phase in my life, is like I love the craft. Like what I love the most is working on the messaging, like riffing with someone or doing a website redesign with my design partner. Like I like the craft. And I think what's really interesting about marketing is like there's not really any senior IC track that's traditional. Maybe that's changing with time. And every marketing leadership job really becomes more of a management and leadership job rather than the craft, right? Which I think, you know, I've done before. There's pros and cons. I might choose to do it again, but I think knowing what that is and what pieces of that job it really is and whether that will make you happy, I think that's kind of yeah, a big piece of it. I think a lot of people do it and are great at it, but it's tough too, right? So it's not always a cakewalk to do those jobs either. So
No, I mean, if it were easy, more people would be doing them. Like it's not for the faint of heart. And I like to say like I'm type A plus. Like if there's a next if there's like a next level of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
just like I really I get that and I joke around and say I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. If I ever actually grow up, like I'll let you know, but I'm still a child basically. I'm like, who
Yeah.
let me be in charge of literally anything? So like if there is
Mm.
like a piece of advice that you could give to somebody who's like trying to figure out what the hell they want to do with their life and what they want to be when they grow up and they happen to have somehow stumbled into growth marketing, like how do you reckon they like start unpacking this
Mm.
for them?
Yeah, I think that like one, for stuff you're curious about, just try it. And that for me was also leadership, right? So you might say, hey, I think I might want to get that leadership job. And maybe like the VP CMO level is quite hard to just try, but like whatever that next level is, people management, if you have a curiosity, I always think you should just try it. And not just about work, like moving to a new city. You can always move back, right? I think most decisions are not, including mine, like being a VP and not, like it's none of it is like a one way door. So I would say always try because that gives you more data. And then I think noting what you like and don't like and what gives you energy and don't, and being honest with yourself about it. And I think for the stuff that gives you energy, which for me is doing the creative work, working with people I love, getting into the details, shipping, like all those pieces, like I know that gives me energy. And then for the things that give me less energy, it's like, is there meaning to it, right? Is it, hey, I have to take on these people management responsibilities, but I do love building a team. I love seeing people thrive. Like if that makes up for it, then great. But I think ultimately, you know, they have to add up in a way. And I think noting those over time and trying to figure out what are the roles. And for example, consulting was all doing the work, right? So like I love that phase and chose it because it was just that piece. And so I think getting clearer on what you like and then trying to move in that direction is my recommendation.
I just love the no decision can be like every decision can be unmade. It's so true. It's so true.
Almost all, like, especially in career. I think it's yeah, and I also think, like, we're probably gonna live till we're 100. You're probably gonna have 3 different careers, so, like, just keep, trying things, and I think being critical about what makes you happy. I think that's probably the more important muscle to build in life than, like, a certain specific marketing muscle, right?
Yeah, I think it is kind of it's hard
Yeah,
because then you
very
have to
hard.
decide that you're like, I'm going to be critical of what makes me happy,
Oh,
not
yeah.
the people around me, not the bosses and mentors and the people that I work for, maybe not even family sometimes. Like I think about the reactions when my husband and I moved to the West Coast. He's the youngest Italian son of a family. Like I
Oh,
knew,
boy. Oh,
yeah,
boy.
I know. Pour one out for 2016 Krystina, who knew not the horrors of whatever she was about to rut, but like if we hated it out here, which we don't, like I'm West Coast, Best Coast, sorry guys, but Deanna and I will go back to New York, eat all of the things, and then
Yeah,
retreat because
exactly.
it's just not my speed anymore. I
Yeah,
like to say I can kick it into that gear when I need to,
right. Yeah.
but I don't really want to need to
Yeah,
anymore.
I got, like, 5 days max in a row. After that, I'm, like, dead, so
Same, inside and outside. Like
yeah,
I'm just like I'm dead inside
well, yeah.
120%. But the no, nothing is forever, right? Like to your point, we might live to be 100 and we might decide like you may come in and out of it. And you're always going to have there's my god, I'm going to like start quoting like Taylor Swift lyrics, but like I there's a lyric in Karma where she's like it's basically like all of the people like you're looking down at all the people that you stepped on to get there. And there's everybody that I speak to about Deanna, like I will tell whoever is listening, like, everybody speaks of you with such genuine joy and affection. And I think a lot of that is that you just are yourself, but you cultivate the personality and you are the personality that somebody wants to work with again and again.
Yeah, and I will just say, like what you said, I think this exercise of figuring out what you really want is really, really hard. I remember, like, when I quit a full-time job before this latest one, like, before I did my last in the consulting, I had, like, such a existential crisis about it. Like, it was really painful, like, really, like and I think a big part of it was, like, if I'm not gonna do the shiny job, the big one that I thought would be, like, you know, unarguably great, then I'm actually responsible for my happiness. I cannot follow a track. Like, I now have to actually decide what I like and don't like. There's, like, no more excuses because if I'm gonna give up the shiniest senior well-paying job to not do it, then I better figure out what I want. And so I think it's hard for sure, for sure. But I think it's worthwhile, and I think at some point you will have an existential crisis about it. So you might as well be proactive. I don't know
No,
if that's too grim.
no,
Like,
I
when do
love
you
that
want your
so
midlife
much.
crisis to happen? Do you wanna plan for it or do you wanna wait for it to hit you? No, I don't know.
I mean, honestly, like, okay, wait. So, like, I think the most type A thing that has come out of either of our mouths during this interview has been, do you want a midlife crisis to just
Yeah.
happen to
Or
you?
do you
Or
wanna
you want to
plan
plan
it?
for it? You want to plan your crisis.
Oh my god,
Plan your
that is
get that
wow.
shit out of the way.
I am so outed myself to be completely unchill, but yes.
I, I
Wow,
love
wow.
that so much.
This is why therapist calls a breakthrough moment. It's on a recording, good.
Okay, well, I could literally talk to you for another 2 hours, but I always end on a question that's we also, besides like our acronyms, which like I love a good acronym, but we also use the term growth hack as an industry all the time. But what I want to know is like, what's your favorite growth like non hack?
I think I thought of this mostly in the context of, like, PMM work, and I actually think I'm my, non-hack for PMM, I think is actually something that growth marketers do a lot, which is to frame things as hypotheses and thinking of ways to test them. Because I think PMM, it's like so like, subjective, it's messaging, we're crafting something. But like we've talked about through this conversation, there are ways to frame your messaging ideas as hypotheses or ways to test them. And I think that brings a lot more credibility to that function that I don't think is maybe best practice. So that would be my non-hack.
I love that. Well, like I said, could literally talk to you for hours. Thank you so much for this. This has been what a wonderful wonderful experience. And just thank you again for joining us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you. My pleasure. Such a fun conversation.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Growth Talks. We hope you found our discussion insightful and fun. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more valuable content. And if you're excited and ready to start up-leveling your growth strategies and execution, Right Side Up has you covered. Right Side Up is a leading growth marketing agency that is partnered with over 1,000 companies of all stages and sizes to help them meet and exceed their growth goals. With expertise across all growth marketing functions, we can help you evaluate product market fit, develop customer acquisition strategies, navigate executional challenges and staffing gaps, and make pivotal decisions with confidence. And whether you need one individual or a custom-built, full-service team, we'll find you the right A+ talent. Visit us at rightsideup.com to see how we can help you and your company grow.